Greetings, my excellent friend.
Welcome to Most Excellent Adventure to
Heavy Metal History.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Heavy Metal History Podcast, my guest is the bass player for Exhumed. He's also working on a comic book based on the band Ghoul. That is Ross Sewage. Thank you for doing the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me on the podcast. Hello, fellow historians and historical people who are just kind of sort of old, so you feel like you're a part of history.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not terribly old, but I definitely feel like I'm a part of history in some respects.
Well, you're doing the Lord. Hello? Yeah, shit. I've always thought about that part in Bogus Journey, and the guitar player from Faith No More, whose name I forget currently because of
yeah,
the
I thought about that many times too. It's like that scene doesn't necessarily age well.
No, they're like, hey, dude, awesome, but you're not on the last two records. Sorry, bye.
Yeah, and that, it's funny too, is that record, or yeah, the main record that he was on, like, just celebrated like a 30-year anniversary too, and nothing from him about it.
No, nothing. Well, and then, I mean, yeah, they've got a whole, like, I guess, Chuck, the original vocalist, he died recently, right? Like a couple of years ago, yeah.
Very unfortunate. And
my wife knew him from living in Cleveland, so she told me some stories about how he was a really nice, but also very strange guy.
Yeah, because they, man, yeah, that's crazy. I guess.
Yeah, Angel Dust. He didn't say anything, nothing. Nobody interviewed him, nothing. Where is he with his very distinctive red glasses? That's, I think, metal misses. I miss that in metal, is some more distinctive things like Slash's top hat, his red glasses. I don't know who the fuck I'm looking at. It's just a bunch of like dudes who look like they lift weights and they've got tattoos now. So I'm like, I don't know, is that the guy who tried to have his wife murdered, or is it the other guy who was just like a really weird Christian dude? I can't tell anymore.
I toured with that guy that tried to have his wife murdered.
Oh, was he fun to hang out with?
That's the thing, is like, when I was touring with him was like right before all that shit happened. So like, for me and my personal experiences with him, he was a nice dude. So
there wasn't any like telltale like, hey dude, so you ever like murder someone else's wife?
Well, that's the thing, is like, I've kind of mentioned this.
Like, that's weird. Where's that come from?
Yeah, I've mentioned this a few times on here vaguely, but and I don't know how much of this is me just like putting my perception of it after knowing what he did, but like, there were times where his wife was around and she was very silent and didn't say a word to anybody and just kind of like looked a little scared, maybe, or out of her element. Maybe that was it too, but I don't know. It's hard to say.
I mean, I feel like I should be scared of him because his bicep is the size of my head, it looks like in photos. So I don't know. I don't really work out that way, or at all. I prefer to enjoy my life.
Yeah, drinking them Molsons, huh?
Yeah, drinking this goddamn Molsons. It's delicious. I'm in Canada, and I like, anywhere I go, I like to enjoy the local stuff. And we're going to South America, I want to eat South American food. If I'm going to Europe, I'm just going to be trying to eat European food. I mean, as much as a pissy ass little hippie vegetarian like me can. And but yeah, I'm all for sipping upon the life's many wonders.
If you get the chance, try Molson Dry. Oof.
They did have that. I did not get that because the Molson's Lager just has such a great can that looks like it just popped out of like 1972.
Yeah.
Like, if they would just do the retro pull tab on it, I'm pretty sure it looks exactly the same.
The thing with Molson Dry is it's got such a high alcohol percentage that you barely need to drink any of them. It's like one of those like quick drunk beers, but it tastes like absolute bull piss. It's disgusting.
I was gonna say, like, how high? Because I'm a regular IPA drinker.
Oh yeah.
So, and I mean, and a regular IPA drunk. To be fair, I'm not trying to say I'm immune to the effects. I get extremely drunk when I drink IPAs, and that's the charm. I feel like there's a good money to drunk ratio going on there.
See, that's exactly, everybody in Canada was like, you got to get the Molson Dry. It's the best bang for your buck. And so...
All right, well, fair enough. We got here just today, and I had to be up at like 4 a.m. to get to an airport, which is a very horrible time for me. It's not a time I'm accustomed to. So trying to take it a little easy today. We'll see how tomorrow goes.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man. So you've been up most of the day today?
Yeah, pretty much.
Shit. Well, thank you. Double thank you then for doing this, because I can imagine like you feel like shit after being up that early.
No, a stomach full of poutine will fix all of that, so we're good.
Well, then let me get down to starting this. You know, things that I want to know about you. Twofold. Obviously, one, you are an artist. You are currently working on, or I assume it's finished, you just have to print it, is the Ghoul comic book based around the band Ghoul and their exploits in Creepsylvania. When did you start drawing, and what kind of got you into it?
I can't tell you when I started drawing, because I've just been drawing my whole life. I'm not like some amazing artist who really honed their craft. I just have been drawing my whole life. My style is the exact same it was when I was about 15 years old. I've not progressed at all, but I have a lot of fun doing it. I've been drawing comics since I was a kid, you know, just tracing character sketches out of old Marvel comics when I was younger, drawing my own comics. Me and the guys from Exhumed, when we were teenagers, before I was even in Exhumed, we were hanging out playing Marvel superheroes role-playing games and drawing comics together. And you know, we had several superhero, they're more like super losers, but we had these characters that we would cross over with each other and have fun. And then kind of just joined a band when Exhumed needed somebody, and they were my buds who I wanted to hang out with more. So I was like, yeah, I could probably figure out how to play bass. And that's kind of the way that went, and that kind of took up a lot of time. So the art thing, I did finish at a state school with an art degree, but it was kind of more like, okay, well, let's figure out how to lay out albums, and let's try to get some t-shirt designs, and let's like figure out screen printing, and you know, things that were more related to like the music end of things as opposed to art for its own sake kind of things.
So then doing this comic book, does it feel like a more artful, like passion project for you then?
It's definitely a passion project where it's something I've wanted to do. It started about, well, I don't even know when it started. It started me thinking about it a long time ago, but about 4 years ago was when I really started to put work into it. Started banging out some scripts and trying to get something going with some different art. Doing my thing, and well, do your thing faster or get back to me. I wasn't hearing back from people, and so I said, well, you know what, this is really my thing, and if it's going to fail, it should be my fail. And so I decided to take the whole thing on myself.
Damn.
And it definitely, it was, I basically started laying it out, and then while on tour, I had to figure out ways so I could finish a comic while still being on tour, playing music. And it was sitting around, you know, in an airport waiting to fly somewhere, putting inks down on a tablet, and just trying to get the whole thing put together in my very, very limited time between having a full-time job. I'm never going to get this done.
And you know, something I have a little bit of experience in that too, man. Like trying to work with an artist when you're, you know, just writing comic books. You kind of touched on it. I heard you say it, that like they're so, not, I don't want to say unreliable, but man, they work at such their own pace, and if like it's not getting done, you know, you're kind of left in the wind with it.
I should be careful, because I mean there was an iteration of the comic book that existed before this one, and as far as I know, the artists who were working on it actually did complete their work, but me getting it via the art was not being sent to me. So I don't want to disparage anybody who actually worked on something and somebody else dropped the ball. So just to put that out there really quick. If they did work on that version of the Ghoul comic, there was one person I did contact. He didn't have his originals, and I said, well, if you don't have it, I don't have it. Oof, I don't think this is happening. So that's kind of when I just put my nose to the grindstone and said, you just got to do this yourself. If it works out, it works out, and we can make more in my life. So that won't be a big deal.
So you've been working on this for about 4 years, then, you said?
Yeah, off and on, obviously. There's been, you know, between that time, there was lots of tours, there was albums being recorded. But I definitely banged out a script about 4 years ago. Was supposed to be working on it with a partner, and it just kind of took like way more years than I wanted it to. And then I finally kind of gave up on that. And so this version, I wrote a whole new script.
Oh, nice.
That I thought was much better than the original, and got another comics pro that I talk with on Twitter to help me. He gave me some tips on how to kind of hone it into shape. And, you know, it'd been a long time since I'd drawn and worked on any comics, so he knew all the beats. This is being a professional who's worked at Marvel and worked with Image and all sorts of things, and said, no, you want to do this and do that. I was like, okay. So I got the script in shape, and then I was doing the layouts at home. I was actually in South America with Exhumed when I really started finalizing some of the artwork. Like I said, a lot of it was done digitally just because there's no desk to sit at while you're on tour and draw something. So I had to do a lot of inking on a computer tablet and get it all together, you know, in between. It's like getting wasted with a bunch of people in Guatemala and then waking up the next morning and trying to put in a couple hours on getting this artwork done. And it took me a couple months, and I finally got it basically finished and put the whole Kickstarter together, which was a whole other gigantic nightmare. And I don't know how there are people who do this all the time, because it is really a lot of fucking work to put together a Kickstarter that is going to be anything.
Yeah.
With the video and all that kind of stuff. I did all the video myself and filmed it all myself and edited it all myself, because, like I said, it was kind of this passion project where I was like, well, it's on me. I'm not going to drag anyone else into this and waste their time if this is indeed a waste of time.
Well, I mean, it's crazy how fast it got funded, and you're like 3 times over that.
The goal I set, I would have lost money on it, but not a whole lot. And I just wanted to kind of get it, you know, make sure it got done, because it's, you know, Ghoul's a really cool band that I like a lot, and I really wanted to see something like this happen, because they just haven't gotten it together to do it themselves. And so I tried to make it happen, and it was a lot of fun to work on, and, you know, work on the stories of Creepsylvania and all that, which are all real life stories, by the way. This is all true stories. So when I say I banged out a script, it's, you know, it's more like a documentary.
Gotcha. Yeah. The one of my favorite things that you've done on it is the cover that's like
story with this robot. Like, I always just came back to that News of the World cover, and just one of the creepiest, you know, rock covers ever. And,
I wonder what it is about it that makes it so creepy. I've never really been able to pinpoint it, but it is fucking weird.
It was based, I'm not going to remember the name of the artist, but he was a pulp fiction artist, and it was from some old, you know, weird Science Tales magazine. And so that, I mean, it was actually a creepy story in the magazine. It was meant to be creepy, and they contacted this old artist from the 50s, asked him if he'd redo it, and he agreed to a certain amount of money, and actually refused to listen to Queen during the project, because he's like, well, what if I hate him? I'm not going to want to finish this.
Oh, wow.
So he finally did listen to Queen. He's like, oh, actually, yeah, they're pretty good.
So, you know, you mentioned you having to draw everything kind of digitally, but I feel like at least some of the artists that I follow or like have talked to or met, they've all really, really adopted digital. I think one of the last guys I talked to was Tony Moore, and he was just like, oh man, like I miss drawing for real, but look at all this stuff I can do digitally now. And he's like so much happier with the process and how much faster it gets done. Do you kind of feel the same way, that it's a lot easier and faster to get everything done?
Well, it's certainly, like I said, it was comfortable with what I'm making on paper, where it's just like, well, this is on the paper and it's done. That was what was in my head. Digital, I think I analyze it a bit more. I mean, I remember Jeff Zornow. He's an amazing artist I love, and I love the guy too. And he was like super against digital, but I mean, he started having to draw professionally and draw Godzilla comic books, and pretty soon he found out that if you wanted to make a living at it, probably needed to bump up his speed a little bit, and he moved to digital. And I mean, his work is still beautiful, so I don't think it detracts anything necessarily, as long as you're using it as a tool and not as a crutch.
Yeah.
If you're drawing,
I agree with that.
I'm putting Frozen or some bullshit. This is like, I am drawing everything on there. It's just I have a few more tools to erase, and I can kind of move towards inking faster, because of course when you're inking on paper, like that's it, you're done, it's period, that's the final. Whereas if you do that on digital, you can say like, you know what, actually fuck all that, I totally fucked this up, and erase it and start over. which is extremely convenient, to be sure. So yeah, mine was a time thing. The first iteration of the Ghoul comic, the one that never came out, I did draw 4 pages on paper, inked. I'd like to do that again, just because I do find it fun. It's fun to have a paper thing at the end and just look at it. And if in a perfect world, considering I was doing a Kickstarter, I probably would have put those done. That helps.
Besides, you work on specifically when you're actually drawing, but when I was actually living in the Bay Area, I went to go see this museum curation thing with original art from Sandman, and I was blown away with like how big the actual sheets are that they had to draw everything on, and I was like, fuck, they shrink that down that small? It's crazy.
Oh yeah. The one that kills me is because I'm also a screen printer, and we do a lot of that's basically what our shop does, is mostly just flat work, poster art. And there's a couple artists, like one name check is Alan Forbes. He's a really good poster, and it still looks that amazing. And that kind of actually floors me more than like how big, some artists are working on a comic and they shrink it down. Of course, it looks great.
Yeah.
All the detail gets smaller, but some guys can actually draw smaller and you make it bigger and it still looks just as good. And that's something I was really trying to work on, at least when I was doing the stuff on paper, was working with smaller and smaller brushes. Even though I was shrinking it down, I was just like, I got to pay more attention to this shit. Some of these guys
yeah, that's the crazy thing about art, man, and like the different ways that every artist kind of works. And I tend to gravitate towards bigger pieces, so I don't fuck anything up. And I notice like the smaller I go, I'm like, oh man, like I've already ruined this and I can't undo it. So I don't know if you've ever run into those same problems, but
Well, yeah, I mean, in a way, I can't do with paper other than just trying to focus better with your eyeballs. You could actually get in there and make sure you're getting your details correct. Whereas if I'm working on paper with a brush, it's just the shakiness of my hand could completely ruin what I'm trying to do with a line somewhere. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, obviously it's like that everyone I'm sure runs into that problem in some regard. And and Impaled has also worked with Razorback from when Ghoul was on Razorback, and of course Impaled is also friends with Tank Crimes. It's all Bay Area kind of people working on this stuff, and definitely played a bunch of shows with them, toured with them, and some other worked with them in general. You got to keep your distance because they get real bitey sometimes, but I definitely love the music, and the story is something I think is just a lot of fun to work with and kind of unique in the way it kind of melds together, like grindhouse cinema with old timey horror comics and Monster Squad.
Yeah, there's something I was kind of curious about, if you had to like go through them to get the okay with like what you were putting in as far as story, or was it just kind of like, here's the lore and go with it?
I mean, to a certain degree, obviously, it's like the script before I started illustrating it. Some trepidation about at least one of the stories that's in the comic book, that it was perhaps going to go a bit too sexy.
Oh, too
but
sexy, huh?
I was like, no, trust me, it's going to be very tasteful. It's going to be more PG-13 than R-rated in terms of the sexiness. The violence, I mean, we know America loves violence. You can get PG rating for good violence. But yeah, no, the sexiness was there's some stuff in that story. Some stuff will be left to the imagination. I'll say that much.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Especially like because you're not really
a band like Gwar. Gwar can like have a song about fucking kids and everyone's gonna laugh. But that's kind of it's in their wheelhouse somehow. They work that out. Ghoul is not kind of that band. Ghoul is a little bit more a terror vision than Reanimator, if I can put it in terms of cinema like that.
Yes.
So as much as they might kill and cannibalize and be horrible people who destroy and everything in their wake, they're not going around having sex with corpses and things like that. they're strictly id. They're just about comic. I don't want it to be, mind-meltingly twisting minds. It's fun. It's fun horror.
Yeah, and I think that's how like a good comic book should be too. Like it needs to be fun. It can't just be like totally outright violent. At least for Ghoul. Not that there aren't those kind of comics out there. But
yeah, for sure. I mean, I love Faust. Yeah, I don't know if you ever read the old Faust comic that was like super ultra brutal, gory, and sex and demons fucking people and just close-ups on like, you know, spiky penises going into vaginas and shit like that. I love that comic like that.
Yeah. So were there any, I know both your Exhumed and Ghoul are like very horror themed, but were there any like movies you kind of homaged in the comic as well? If you care to divulge that?
If there, you know, I mean, movies is so damn influential to me. There's some parts of Evil Dead 2, especially the comedy horror stuff like Reanimator, Evil Dead 2. That stuff's really my wheelhouse. I love that kind of stuff. And I'm sure there's some of that in there. I can't lay any specifics. There's definitely some pretty overt metal album cover references throughout the book. Beyond Queen, just because I have fun with that kind of stuff, being like, hey, you know what this kind of looks like? You know what? Fuck it. Make it totally look like that. Fuck it. Fuck it. I don't care.
That's sick.
So
yeah, because I mean,
you have a lot of fun with it.
You kind of, it's like parody almost. So you're not gonna get like sued over it. Plus, I'm assuming you probably know a lot of the guys that you're referencing.
Oh yeah, no, it's all in fun, and I'm pretty sure I'm protected under many laws in the United States concerning satire and parody.
So you're obviously a big comic book fan as well as horror fan, but do you remember like the first comic books you kind of got that got you into reading them and, you know, wanting to draw?
Well, there was I mean, to a certain degree, like I was definitely reading the original Marvel run of Transformers. It was a very early comic for me. Crisis on Infinite Earths was like my first foray into DC, so I didn't really know that. I mean, actually, Captain Carrot and his amazing Zoo Crew. I don't know if you even know what the fuck that is, but that was probably, I don't. It was a funny animal book from DC, and they had these funny animals in the 50s, and they did superhero versions. Getting more into it was definitely probably the very first one would have been Keith Giffen's Ambush Bug was super influential on me, just in terms of his art was very out of the norm for comic books at the time. It was really, I want to say chiaroscuro. It had a lot more dark elements to it than other comics that, you know, just show the superhero looking supremely awesome. And Keith Giffen did something that looked dirtier, and it was a very meta for the time too. It was very, 20 years before Deadpool, he was talking directly to the reader and stuff like that.
Oh, interesting.
And it's a great comic, and so I followed that, and then I just kind of got more. I liked a lot of the superhero stuff, some weird sci-fi stuff here and there, other Valiant universe, all sorts of things. But that Ambush Bug was like Keith Giffen's work. I mean, I can't understate how underappreciated it is and how ahead of its time it's always been.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. And I'm a pretty big comic book reader myself, so I'll definitely have to go find it now because I feel like I've ran everything dry.
Yeah, no, go look up Ambush Bug, the limited series. He did some fun stuff in DC Comics Presents. That's where the character came from, and Keith Giffen worked on that. It was like Superman, and it was kind of also interesting. He drew Superman not in the 80s style. He drew it very much like Siegel and Schuster from like the 40s.
Oh, nice. In
this weird retro way. But yeah, when he really got to explore with Ambush Bug, it became really dark and dirty, but it's also super funny. It's got a lot of satire in it.
Oh, I love that.
He took this weird superhero or supervillain, technically, turned him into like a private dick, which is Marvel has done that a lot with some of their more edgy superheroes later on. When you would just go there and every subway platform smelled of piss, and every corner had a prostitute on it.
That's crazy. I can't believe I'm just now hearing about this. I consider myself a connoisseur, the character's
been around.
Man.
The character's been around. He's like even on like the Superman animated show and stuff, but kind of like just as a side note. But yeah, that comic is amazing and super influential to me, at least.
That's cool. I love getting recommendations like that, especially when it's something that is a little bit outside the norm of superhero comics, because I got so fucking burnt out on those.
Yeah, and I love them. I mean, I got a soft spot, but yeah, it's real easy to get burnt, and you're just like, and especially now.
Just start over again.
Yeah,
and I was like, why?
It's infuriating. There was a period, at least with Marvel comics, where they were kind of doing some new stuff when they introduced like Miss Marvel, and they had and Jessica Jones, and they were kind of like, okay, this universe is evolving. Oh, hey, look, There's another guy who's Captain America now, and it's just like it felt like they were going to maybe do it kind of permanent and do something new and different, and that their world had evolved, and instead they just in the last year they just said, nah, actually we're going to reboot it all back to the original thing. And I'm like, I've read these stories, I'm bored.
Yeah, exactly. DC did something very similar, and I think I will say both sides obviously both have great writers, great artists, and they both have not so great writers and artists. But man, I think one of my favorite guys in the past decade is Jonathan Hickman. That guy, I will read anything he does. I know
the name, and I'm trying to remember what he's done.
He was the main guy that took over Avengers.
I think I have read some of his stuff for sure then.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen the movies, but a bunch of the characters in the fucking Thanos movies, whatever they're called, those are a lot of his characters that he came up with in his run of the Avengers, like Ebony Maw.
Yeah,
a lot of cool stuff.
All the dark, whatever Thanos' little guys are called, I forgot.
Yeah,
sure. Mining this shit to a degree that I can't. I think I'm done caring about it.
Yeah, I felt the same way too.
Like Endgame was great, and now I'm done. That was neat, and now I want to see more things. Like I'm big sci-fi fan too. I want it coming out because that's like the craziest, most realistic sci-fi I've ever seen in my entire life. And I'm ready for new universes. I don't need to see the Hulk over and over and over again anymore.
Yeah, I agree. It's like, I get that they make money, and that's good, and it's cool that we finally have the technology to do a lot of those stories and characters justice, as opposed to like the 70s and 80s and even early 2000s. But yeah, I don't know. I think I got the story that I wanted to see too, so I'm like cool with just like moving.
Yeah, and I'm hoping maybe I know obviously metal fans were going to be into like the Ghoul comic because Ghoul's been universal to themselves and some new fun stories to tell with completely new characters. And I know it's kind of anathema to a lot of people to try to jump into something new when it's like, oh, I want to see the 5th version of the Joker or the 5th version of Spider-Man. But I'm like, I'm hoping that comics fans can also get in on this and have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I agree. Because like a band that's based around like horror lore get made into a comic book, it makes perfect fucking sense.
Yeah, and I'd like to, want to explore it more, and kind of the way this comic book works. It fleshes out a couple things from some of their records, and then it goes a little bit further than that and tells some other fuller stories, kind of branching off of that. And I'd love to be doing more of that because, to be honest, Ghouls doesn't put out enough records for my taste. I'd like to see a lot more.
Yeah,
because they're telling a story, but every 4 or 5 years they tell just like another tiny chapter, and it's like, well, hey, maybe we could tell a couple other little stories on the side with the comic book, or whatever it could branch out to in any other kind of medium. As long as it's
funded so far, there's definitely a market for it there, which is cool.
Yeah,
to
definitely.
See.
Much to my surprise, I thought there'd be some, but Ghoul has, I guess, got a good cachet. I was maybe a little bit more worried about just me as a person and being kind of necessarily always pay close attention to.
Well, I don't know. Like, I think for me, like seeing the art that you've put up on like the Kickstarter page, it just screams pure comic book art. Like, I looked at it and I was like, damn, that's perfect. Like, it makes a lot of sense for how it looks.
Yeah, I hope so. I did send a couple previews base for like, a couple decades, but could you give me some critiques and let me know what I need to, fix up in this, and can I please enter your world? And they were all very kind and very helpful, and really gave me a lot of good tips.
That's good, man.
On stuff that, I've been a bit of, like I said, I've been drawing all the, I had put it a little bit to the side just so that I could still be on stage headbanging and, having a good time drinking with my friends.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I think the success from that book kind of speaks otherwise, to you really putting in the work, So I think I think that you could do more. You maybe say you're not honing your craft.
Well, I'm trying to now. Just it's a normal thing to try to jump jump careers in your 40s, right? That's like a totally normal thing.
Yeah, I think so. I got about 8 years to find out, but Sounds about right.
Well, I mean, I always tell myself Rodney Dangerfield didn't really make it until he got into his 40s, so I'm like, I got a little bit of time.
Yeah, I noticed that too, where there's a lot of people that I try to like compare to, and I'm like, wait, this guy didn't get famous until when? That's crazy.
Yeah, I love those guys. You know, fuck motherfuckers like Zuckerbergs and all these guys who got rich when they were in their 20s. I hate them. I hate them all.
It's a jealousy thing though, because I was about to bring Ladybugs up, man, because I listened to this podcast where they were talking about the movie, and they got some behind the scenes scoop about like him filming on the movie and how half the time he was barely there, or if he was just like straight up trash all the time.
Yeah, he had some substance abuse issues. You can hear it on a couple of his records. You're like, oh, this is the cocaine one. Oh, this is the pills one.
That's man, there's an old what's his name? The guy that played the clown in Spawn. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name.
John Leguizamo.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. He has a special from like early in his comedy days, or I guess kind of early, and he is seriously just whacked out on cocaine. That whole
he's super
fucking
high.
special.
You can see that in his movie The Pest and stuff. Like when he started, he was so amped up and crazy. Yeah. He's clearly he's clearly skiing Mount Everest for sure the whole time.
So let's see. Let's switch gears here a little bit.
Sure.
Maybe go more into Exhumed and music stuff for just a little bit here. I don't want to take up too much more of your time.
Oh no, absolutely. Well, that is another gigantic part of my life. So. Yeah,
exactly. And
Let's talk
it's funny
about
because so I like to ask kind of about those first bands and records that you remember hearing that just left that fucking mark on you, where you're like, yes, this is what I want to do. I want to play this kind of music, or even if it just kind of evolved over the years that you eventually were like, yep, this is my kind of music right here.
Yeah, well, I kind of have a weird history with that because I was definitely a late bloomer when it came to music in terms of like I know people who were into Iron Maiden when they were 8 or 9, and I was building models and reading comic books, and then I kind of started in junior high school to kind of be. I met the guys who were basically already jamming in Exhumed, Cole and Matt. I met Cole in high school, and Matt, Cole brought me over to, this guy Matt's house. He's like, we play role-playing games, we read comic books, come hang out and listen to metal. So I kind of got this jump start where those guys had already done a lot of the legwork. So all of a sudden they're like, here, check out this Venom record, check out this Sodom record, check out this Voivod record, check out, the Misfits and all this stuff that I have seen so much stuff so fast. But also being able to skip a ton of bullshit, which was really nice. Like I never like had to listen to, Celtic Frost, Cold Lake and be like disappointed in it. I already knew it was going to suck. Like it was already out and I was already told, yeah, this is the sucky album from them. Don't worry about it. Okay, cool. Let's just listen to the good shit then. So, so I got very quickly into like, I was kind of just getting into like industrial metal and some heavy metal. And then all of a sudden, like, this guy's lending me Godflesh, Slave State, and Carcass Symphonies of Sickness. And I'm like, what the fuck is even happening here? Like, this shit's insane. So
yeah, that's a huge jump.
Yeah, I jumped a lot of chapters, like, Justin Broderick with his insane fucking paranoid riffs blasting me in the head, and it's just like a completely different world. So that was like kind of where it came in, and the stuff that really stuck out that always worked with me was a band that I've always just loved and enjoyed so much, just that kind of angst. Obviously Carcass has been a pretty big influence. I think anybody who listens to anything I've ever been involved in could tell that. Voivod is huge to me, especially with the narrative aspect. I mean, their music is brilliant, but I've always been drawn to them because they always had the story to tell. And even in our dumb death metal bands, I've always kind of approached, we're using Carcass lyrics, but I am trying to always tell a story with every song. And, to the point where Impaled did a concept record, and then, years later, Exhumed did a concept record when I rejoined with them. And I love shit like that. And, that kind of goes back to the whole thing about, growing up with watching horror movies and reading comic books. I was like, I love stories. It's not just about like this, just some song about like some guy sticking a knife where it shouldn't go doesn't really interest me much. I kind of want to hear something about a motivation and emotions, and not like emotions is maybe the wrong word. That's going to make it sound like metalcore or something, but you know what I'm saying? Where it's like,
Yeah.
there is a story to tell within this dumb, 3 minutes of music. Like, you can actually get through a beginning, middle, and end if you carefully craft your words.
Yeah, I think that's something I gravitate towards too as well, because I do like storytelling in music specifically, as well as like other things, but it also, especially with the way like metal culture is right now, there's like an extra looking glass on lyrics and meanings behind songs. So if you can put it in a narrative, it's less harmful to people that want to like kind of cry out about like, this lyric is objectifying women or whatever, and it's like, well,
that's very,
you know what?
that was kind of always Marduk's excuse, right? Until they got outed for ordering a bunch of Holocaust denying books or some shit like that. I can't remember, but something got doxed about their book orders from some website. It was like, oh yeah, you guys aren't just about the story. Okay, let's reevaluate this. But it's a very interesting point, and I think that was always kind of like Slayer's defense with like Angel of Death, was like, no, we're just telling this thing from history, like it's a story.
Yeah.
And so I mean, obviously I tell stories about reprehensible people. They're murderers and they're violent. I've always tried to keep the misogyny to as much of a minimum as humanly possible, because I always thought that was a weak story to tell and an obvious story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like, a lot of like death metal bands, like, Brutal Slayer, and I'm going to sing about Richard Ramirez. I was like, I'm not interested, but like, let's talk about why this guy's in love with a dead body. That's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, and I think it kind of solves that like delineation of like glorifying the killer over just like taking the actions and just making that into the story, which is way better.
I mean, we just filmed this for the new record. I mean, maybe since we're doing a podcast, I should mention this. October 4th, Exhumed has a new record out called Horror, and
Yes,
I am on it.
I've already heard it.
And we've got you heard it through Matt?
I'm on one of the PR lists for this.
What's in something like Death's Revenge, but it's a lot of fun. And we had this kind of like throwback horror video, and in the video I got the synopsis from the director and from Matt, via Matt, and it was like, okay, the doctor comes in and kills a couple people, and I was like, well, that's kind of dull. I tried to say, I was like, we have one scene to tell an entire horror movie, so let's make this like, let's build some character in here. The girl's chewing gum while she's having sex in her tent because she doesn't really care. This guy's kind of a lameoid, and then he gets killed, and then she's got to run away. But like most horror movies, the girl gets a turn on the killer if it's a good horror movie, like Last House on the Left or Friday the 13th or any of those. Like the girl, like there's always that final girl, they call it, and so I was like, hey, why don't we do this where the girl turns the tables on our little, our Eddie, as it were, Dr. Filthy, and she gets the chainsaw at the end. And like, to me, I'm like, okay, now we've told a story.
Yeah.
I like the 80s vibe. I know for whatever we're doing, I am friends with everybody in the band, so I know what we're capable of, and I believe that we can always push it just a little bit further than the dumbasses that we kind of pretend to be,
I don't know, man. I like that, there's like some thought put into it that like, hey, we have this love of horror and gore and, not that Ghoul does, and I think that comes across in the music.
I'm glad it does, because I mean, that's what it is to me. My wife loves true crime documentaries and stuff like that, and I'm 0% interested in that stuff. I love history. I love watching documentaries about mad dictators and world events that have like affect us now. That's sad, but I like I like the horror movie aspect of it. Is obviously it's because every horror movie is about more than just a killing. I mean, it is it's a tawdry genre. But in every horror movie, you see more than its parts if you look at it long enough, and you can see the time that it's made and the social ills that were scary at that moment. And that's the kind of stuff I realized about the 70s and about the scare of like, the ending of hitchhiking and modernification of the workforce, and these, these blue collar workers, they're more scared of the robot. They're as scared of the robot as they are of the alien at a certain point. And it represents the re-adjudicating the Vietnam War as much as Rambo was.
Interesting. I never thought about it like that.
This was a more recent one that I thought about, where I was like, well, let's see aliens. It's like, I know James Cameron was doing something. He dressed his characters like Vietnam soldiers, like they all like tags on their helmets and shit like that. But here they are coming in on a rescue, and I'm like, oh my god, this is as much as an 80s movies as Rambo 2. You are just supposed to be rooting for the Marines as they come in to like invade this other creature's area.
Yeah.
And I'm like, maybe I'm reading a little too much into it, but that's what I'm seeing there. Is like, I'm like, this is Rambo 2. This is going for the fictional POWs that actually don't exist, because we want to feel like we never lost that war.
Yeah, I think that that actually makes a lot of sense, putting it that way, and I don't think you're reading too much into it. Not like those crazy Room 237
right.
people
well,
about
like
The Shining. I think that's like a perfectly good allegory. Yeah. So let's maybe I can get your opinion on this. I don't know if you've seen any of Ari Aster's films, the guy that did Hereditary and Midsommar.
I liked one. I hated the other.
Really? Which one did you like or hate?
I loved Hereditary.
Okay.
Loved it. I thought it was a great. It's part of there's like a small movement, and I love the satanic vibe, cult vibe kind of going on. Very took a lot from Rosemary's Baby. Yeah. And it's Suspiria and stuff like that. And I liked a lot of the quiets. People were like laughing at the Headless Corpse movie, and I'm like, that's exactly what you'd see in a 70s movie. Like, you would see that. That's exactly what would happen at the end of a 70s movie. And I really appreciated the way he brought that, modernized it, and made it creepy for a new generation, and like did that. There was another the guy who did the Innkeepers, and I forget his second movie's name. The one about like it's a babysitter, and she's supposed to be babysitting
House of the Devil.
Old lady. And House of the Devil. Jesus, goddamn, I love that movie.
Yeah, Ty.
Creepy. And even he says, he's like, I don't care about horror movies. He's like, I want to make movies, but horror fans, they're more willing to accept like weird shit. And that's totally true. And I, in some ways I agree with him. It's like, I'm not always necessarily like a horror fan. Like, I get a lot of shit because I think Lucio Fulci kind of sucks. But he's just not a good storyteller. But like, horror is this great way that you film. Mm-hmm. Is you can get to a different emotional level, and you can play more with the camera because it's this low budget shit that's going to sell. So like, I think there's a lot of weird experimentation that happens in horror movies that isn't necessarily going to get to happen in any other kind
it's kind of starting to be more artful than its previous like iterations, where it was all just like schlocky kind of no budget movies, and now you have like Jordan Peele and Ari Aster and the guy that did The Witch, Robert Eggers, all those guys.
God, that movie's so good. Like, people are like, horror sucks now, and I'm like, I don't think you guys are watching the right movies, or maybe you just want another slasher for anything to it. It's just like, it's like I might as well just go watch the original Friday the 13th. Like, I don't need to see those movies, like, or what are the characters called from Hatchet, how many fucking sequels he had. I'm bored with that. Like, but Witch and Hereditary was like dipping into another side of horror and like bringing a whole new thing to it. Now, Hereditary, there's a lot to love. Basically holds up until I don't fucking give a shit about spoilers. The movie's good whether it's got spoilers or not. If a movie sucks because it has spoilers, that movie sucks. Just period.
I'm with you on that.
So the part where the two people sacrifice themselves pretty much holds up to there. At that point, all those characters are as dumb as the scientists in Prometheus. They're fucking so awful. And like, you just like, I can't sympathize with them. I can't deal with them. They're so dumb and awful, and just unwilling to accept the things that happen around them, that it's completely the most unrealistic thing should be the mystical aspects of like something like a horror movie like that. But I'm like, the most realistic thing about this,
I'd just be so out of my mind with how insane everything is that I might make that dumbass decision too.
Maybe, but like in Prometheus, it's like, okay, dumbass decision. We take our helmets off because we think we can breathe. Sure, fine.
Yeah, that's stupid.
But now I'm going to go pet this weird creature on another zoologist and biozoologist, and I know that there are creatures on Earth that look like that you can't even pet and touch. Fuck you. Mm-hmm. That movie sucks. It's garbage. It's like, I can't handle that.
Yeah, I like those when they first came out. I remember liking them, and then like on rewatches, I was like, man, all these characters are really, really fucking dumb.
They're so dumb. I just can't handle that. I'm like, these are supposed to be scientists. That's why you watch like a movie like what's it called? Identity Europa? Was it called Identity Europa? or Europa Report. That's the one. And they go to Europa, and there's a creature under the ice. But like, you know, everything that happens to them is like mechanical failures. They're doing their best, and they're just like over. Report is amazing that way. None of the scientists and astronauts in that movie are stupid. They just are dealing with overwhelming forces around them.
I think I have seen that movie now that you mention it. When you mentioned the under the ice stuff, I was like, wait a minute, I've definitely seen this.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, you know, these are, you know, come on, let's be real. Like, you know, how many tests do you have to go through to be an astronaut? And they're gonna send some dumbass up to a fucking planet who pets a big weird snake he just met. Like, fuck off. I mean, I think he's sucked since like 1982. So that's my personal opinion. He did make one of my favorite movies of all time, and it's brilliant. I mean, Alien is one of the best movies ever made, but he just went off the deep end after that. Who knows? So people do that.
But he questioned any of his decisions, and they just kind of yes-anded him the whole way, and then that's where it ended up.
Well, that's what happens after a while. That's what happened to George Lucas on the prequels for Star Wars.
Oh man, I know.
And to be frank, Return of the Jedi. Nobody was willing to tell him that Return of the Jedi was a bad idea, and that he hired a director outside of the union who could not direct to fucking save his goddamn life. I enjoy the movie, don't get me wrong, but it's not very good.
I'm gonna say I'm a bit of a Jedi defender on this one, because you know, the Ewoks get a lot of shit for being cute little teddy bears, but man, they just murder stormtroopers left and right.
Where they had Richard Donner doing the first one, which is an amazing, one of the first really good superhero films.
Yep.
And then they handed it over to this clown because they wanted it to be a comedy, and it shows on the second half of the movie.
Yeah, those Superman sequels got worse and worse and worse as
they're terrible. The Dino De Laurentiis is insane. So a lot of that was like good by accident. And also he threw a ton of money at it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The Queen soundtrack definitely helps with that, too.
The Queen soundtrack, I mean, the costuming, the set design, there was a lot of artists working on that, doing some amazing shit that you could never do now, because now they'll just throw a green screen up and everyone has to act in front of a green screen. There's Line, that was all improv both times.
I did not know that.
Yeah, in the first movie, it was improv half of the first Iron Man movie was improv. They didn't really have a script. It's amazing that the movie worked at all. And then apparently that second time in the Endgame movie, they were talking about how to end this, and the directors had no idea. The scriptwriter had no idea. And it was some editor was like, just have him say, "I'm Iron Man" again.
Damn.
And they're like, holy shit. It was just some script, some editor. And like that's why Star Wars is so good, because George Lucas's wife saved the mess he had made.
Yeah, I do think Empire is by far like almost nearly untouchable in terms of like all of them. New Hope's really good too, though. I don't know.
I love New Hope. Empire is an extremely well crafted movie with the worst twist in all history that completely dooms the franchise thereon.
Because of the father thing.
Yeah, it just completely fucked it.
Yeah,
I liked watching the story about, and then the kid goes, meets an old guy, learns kung fu, and then comes back and kicks ass. He becomes better than he was ever meant to be. And then in Star Wars, it was like, that's the first one.
Mm-hmm.
The second one, like, I'm your father. And it's like, oh, okay, this is all predestined. This is, the greatest story ever told. This is the Bible. This is bullshit. Fuck it. I hate it.
Yeah, it feels like they're trying to do that with the new ones, too, a little bit.
Everything is destined. That's the only thing. I hated that Last Jedi. Like, I thought it was a terribly made movie, but I loved the creative decisions made in it, like, where he's like, Rey, you're nothing. Your parents are nothing. Who the fuck are you? And she's like, what? They're nothing? I love that. I'm like, let's get this back to, like, where it kind of, Han Solo was like, yeah, the Force is kind of bullshit. And this guy's like, I think it's kind of real. And, like, that's an argument they could make. It wasn't about destiny. And it wasn't about midichlorians. And it wasn't about, who's your goddamn dad. It was just like, I'm going to train.
I think.
Which is very much a kung fu aesthetic. I
think from what I've heard, they're going to undo that, not knowing.
And intact, and I loved it. They'll make movies I don't like now, and that's fine. I'll go back and watch the first Star Wars and love it. It's great. It still holds up to me. It's an amazing movie. I'll go back and watch Big Trouble in Little China the same reason.
Oh yeah.
If they make a new shitty one, fuck it. I don't care. This isn't my story to tell.
Yeah, I think I kind of feel the same way, man. Like they can make even in comic books, like when they just rebooted everything, it's like, well, you know what? The comic books that I love, they still exist, so I can go read Alan Moore's Swamp Thing and not worry about like whatever
Absolutely.
they're doing now.
I'll go read like the Marvel Dark Reign stuff over and over again. That's like one of the most brilliant arcs in like over an entire comics universe that I've ever read.
Yeah.
It's like amazing.
That was the one with
Stuff like that, and
Osborn.
I don't like where they're at now, but I'll go back and check. I'll check stuff out periodically, and I know how, really trying to delve deep into, especially because I'm on tour a lot. I read a lot of digital comics, but I'm going on Comixology and trying to find like Lock and Key is an amazing story about these kids.
I love Lock and Key, dude.
Oh my god, it's brilliant, and that people, I think they're excited about it going to this big screen. I think they're trying to make it a thing, but I'm like, just look at this art. Oh my fucking god.
Mm-hmm.
The guy's brilliant, untouchable.
Yeah, he's
like the way he can depict architecture is like insane.
Oh man, especially all that old like northwestern Gothic architecture, man, or northeastern. Sorry.
Yeah, it's crazy, but here, I'm loving it because now I'm invested in this new story and these new characters. I want new things. I want to hear new music. I don't want to just keep listening to the same Slayer record.
This year, Sabbath Assembly being one of them, and he's guest spotted on like 1 million records so far this year. Where I'm like, damn, dude.
That's what I want to be doing. I got to work my day job, but it's like, I guess, well, here I am. I'm in Canada. I'm hanging out with Ghoul. I'm going to play with Impaled. And then I got to get ready for an Exhumed tour coming up in October while I'm putting out a Ghoul comic book.
Yeah, you got your hands full right now, that's for sure.
I can't be bored. Boring sucks. I hate it.
Yeah.
Then I have to deal with...
Well, I think that's like part of, what you do as far as like being an artist and the music you make. Like it comes across there. You guys are just trying to have fun, which is good.
I'm trying to have a good time. I mean, I'm still going to... class warfare on there. But if you just read the lyrics, it can also just be a fun song about people dying. It's okay. I'm all right with that.
Yeah, it's open to interpretation. That's like
exactly.
The best part.
Yeah, that's what art should be, to a certain degree. Like if you can't get some people on your side to figure out what it's about, it's like, I feel like you haven't made your message clear enough. But like at the same time, it should just also be enjoyable for other people, just to kind of listen to and party to.
Yes. Yeah, because like I feel like a lot of metal, maybe not a lot, but some of it takes itself way too fucking serious sometimes, and like that's cool if that's your thing, but the genre's already got enough problems where like you just got to have fun with it sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can look at Impaled's past and my past with Exhumed too. It's like we've never taken ourselves too goddamn seriously, and it's not to say that I don't like serious metal. I like a good amount of black metal and doom metal. And I like something that really speaks to me. But at the end of the day, if I'm not having fun with it, I'm not probably going to listen to it. Or at least if it's not like just charging me emotionally in some fashion, that's like, even feeling sad can be positive at times. So it's like how you come across. But when you come across like things that are just pure hatred and disgusting, yeah, I'm not interested at all.
Yeah, that's like a weird problem right now that seems to be...
It's been a problem for a long time. I think, like many things, it's become magnified because of this, the worldwide situation we broke the world in the 2000s and kind of opened up the fissures for a lot of fucking hatred to come back into the fold. And it's kind of a thing that happens at the beginning of every century. I'm kind of hoping that this follows the same pattern. You got your and maybe we'll have another nice period of some kind of enlightenment where some things come to the fore, like civil rights did in the 20th century, and science especially went a long way in the 20th century. And it's like maybe we're building up to that. I hope.
Yeah, I would hope so too, man. Funny enough, so part of what took me so long to get home today is I was walking home from work, and on my way back, where I live, this whole car park was filled with these flyers for this fucking white supremacist group around here. Or not even around here, just in general. And I had to go around to all those cars and take those things off. I was like, I'm not standing for this. Like, this is fucking disgusting. So I went and threw that whole parking lot and threw them in the trash. And I was like,
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you live in Tennessee, correct?
Yeah.
So you're probably subjected to a lot more of that kind of stuff than I am living in the Bay Area.
Yeah,
sure.
It's weird, man, because I used to live up there in the Bay Area in Santa Rosa, and I moved back here like 2 years ago, and it's sad how much like a lot of that stuff hasn't changed. Even though the city where I'm at's grown up a lot, and it's definitely a little bit more accepting, but that shitty element is still here, and it's fucking disgusting.
I mean, and it is still in the Bay Area. We had a driver taking us to the airport, and she was telling us about, she was white, but she had a black daughter, and she was telling us about her daughter was trying to explain to her the thin blue line, and she's like, I thought that was a thing for cops, and then my daughter's telling me, I was like, oh yeah, no, it's started as a thing for like cops, but even that was kind of rooted in the racism of cops.
Yep.
And racists glommed onto that real fast.
Yeah.
And so her daughter knows that when she sees that car with like a Confederate flag flying from it and a thin blue line flag, and it's like, oh weird, those would go together.
Disgusting.
Of course those go to. And this is remember, this is still the Bay Area. This is not like that far from Berkeley that everybody thinks is hippy dippy liberal. This is like 10 miles north. It's not far away.
Yeah.
America's got a huge problem with racism. It always has. It always probably will. And always, like, you take take 2 steps forward, there's that step back, and that step back hurts.
Yeah, we're kind of getting out of that step back, hopefully.
Yeah, we're kind of going like 2-3 steps back right now. It's it's going to take some real action to try to gain that foothold and go forward again.
Yeah, it's weird, man. I try to like distance myself from it, but at the same time I'm just like, it's everywhere and you can't really avoid it.
Yeah, you can distance it to a certain degree, but then it's always going to pop up in your face again on some level, and it does. And you got to try to like think about what kind of person you're going to be when that situation arises, and you rolling around and throwing away a bunch of flyers, it's perfect. It's great.
Yep.
It's the little things you can do. Absolutely.
Yeah, I was just so annoyed when I saw it. I was like, oh my god, I can't fucking believe this. There's a few groups around here, and it's just like, it's very upsetting because it doesn't have any place, I don't feel like.
It certainly shouldn't. If you read the base of the Statue of Liberty, it should not.
So let's end this on kind of a fun note here.
Cool, let's do that.
Yeah. So since I'm going to be talking to Matt sometime next week, I was going to ask him this too. If you had to kill the rest of your band members in a fun horror way, how would you do that?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a weird question. In a fun horror way.
Yeah, just. I
mean, I guess the obvious answer for Exhumed would be a chainsaw, but I don't think I'd actually enjoy that. If I were to try to do it in a pleasant way, if I'm reading one way into fun, I think a room full of nitrous gas would be pretty good.
Okay.
So like everybody could be laughing and hysterically and then just choke to death and not even realize it. It's a fun thing about nitrous is it doesn't hurt your lungs, so you can actually just choke to death on that shit.
Wow.
Now, if I wanted to make it more spectacular to actually make it explode, definitely. So I might have to put some charges in there to make it to really take it further.
There you go. All right, so you're gonna explode everybody in the van.
Yeah, fuck it.
That's good. I like that.
It'd be a great ending to the band. It's like, hey, we lived on the road, we died on the road. Boom.
Well, shit, Ross. Oh yeah. So before we go here, the Kickstarter. Where can people?
You're gonna wake me up before we go?
Yeah, of course. I'll make sure you're ready. I don't know the rest of the line. Never mind.
Are we never gonna dance again?
Have we danced before?
I'll keep making Wham references. It's a live-long day. So let's move on. What were you going to say?
The Kickstarter. Where can people go give money to it? Because they really need to. They need to buy this comic. Let's get to that next stretch goal. I want to see if we can get $2,000 more. I think that'd be okay. Yeah, and I'll link to it when this goes up. And I already shared it on the podcast Facebook page. So
awesome. Yeah. It's if you go to the Ghoul Facebook, look up Ghoul on Facebook, look up Ghoul on Instagram, look up Sewage 666 on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I've got it linked all over the fucking place. It should not be hard to find.
Fuck yeah. That's awesome. Well, Ross, thank you seriously for doing this, man. I know you've had a long day, and this was fun to talk about all the art and horror and Exhumed shit that we could.
I'll talk art and horror the live long fucking day as long as these Molsons hold out.
Hell yeah, man.
Yellow.
All right.
See if this works better.
I heard that whole sentence. That's good.
That's a good sign. Yeah, so I was trying to say I ate about 4 pounds of poutine, and I've got Molson's Canadian Lager in the room, so I'm doing good, and I'm doing very Canadian.
Fuck yeah. Yeah, dude, it's been so many years since I've been to Montreal, and I miss poutine more than anything.
You can make it. Just make gravy and put it on French fries. Jesus.
That's true.
It's not, I mean, okay, there is a special gravy you get up here, but you can make other gravy. I do it all the time. I love poutine.
Yeah. I think I'm just lazy then. That's probably where that is.
That might be that yeah, you're like, oh shit, it's not on Grubhub. I can't have poutine. This sucks.
Yeah. There's a local restaurant around here that does like southern poutine, and it's okay, but they deep fry the cheese so it doesn't melt over the fries.
No,
that kind of defeats the purpose.
I mean, deep fried cheese curds are very, very good, but they're a separate thing. You don't mix church and state. What the fuck is that about?
See, I agree.
No, you got to have the melty thing. I just put a photo up on Twitter of the cheese just melting. It's so stringy. It's like that scene in Top Secret where they're trying to eat pizza, but it's too stringy.
Yes.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
Oh my god, that is... Yep, see? I agree. I'll have to tell them to change the recipe, and then maybe more people will buy it.
Yeah, go in there and just tell the cook how to do it. That's what they like to hear. They want to hear more customer input on their menus.
Well, shit, man. Thank you for taking the time to do this, first of all. I really do appreciate it.
Back at you.
I want to talk all about this Ghoul comic because it's such a fun and cool ass idea. So hopefully we can get into that a little bit.
Sure.
All right, let me do an intro, and then we'll go from there.
Are you even recording the poutine conversation?
I did. Yeah,
good.
yeah.
That should be that's like after the credits. That's like when Tony Stark meets Nick Fury the first time.
Yeah, I do that sometimes, like, because I'll pre-roll stuff, and then, like, then I'll do the intro, and then at the end of it, I'll, like, slip something in there for people to hear all the bullshit I talk about beforehand. It's fun that way.
Good.
All right, we'll get into this now.
Be excellent to each other. And party on!